Hey, welcome back. Once a month, we take one story about homelessness in America and go all the way in. The history, the policy, the people, no surface level stuff.
This month, we're talking about veterans. And I want to say something before we start. This is not going to be a sad story about people who fell through the cracks. It's a story about promises, specific, documented, legal promises. Promises that the country made to the people who served it, and then broke.
We're going to follow the full arc, where the promise came from, when it started to fail, and what that failure looks like on the ground today.
If you're not subscribed to the City Relief newsletter yet, the link is below. Okay, let's get into it.
In 1888, a group of Civil War veterans donated 388 acres of land in Los Angeles to the federal government. The deed was specific. The land was to be used permanently as a home for disabled veterans.
Today, the same land hosts a UCLA baseball stadium, a private school that built a $15 million athletic complex, an oil company, a parrot sanctuary, and just outside the gates on the public sidewalk, a tent city. Veterans sleeping on the street on land that was legally deeded to house them.
2 veterans died on that sidewalk.
The federal government's commitment to housing veterans didn't start with a program. It started with a war. After the Civil War, the country was left with hundreds of thousands of disabled and destitute veterans and no system to care for them. In 1865, Congress created the National Home for Disabled Volunteer Soldiers, a network of large residential campuses across the country where veterans could live out their days with housing and medical care and community.
It was, by the standards of the time, a serious and genuine commitment. The West LA campus, deeded in 1888, was part of that network. After World War II, the scale of the commitment expanded dramatically. The GI Bill of 1944 is one of the most consequential pieces of legislation in American history. It gave returning veterans low-cost mortgages, college tuition, vocational training, and a year of unemployment benefits.
The GI Bill was approved just weeks after D-Day and carried with it a simple promise to all who had served. You pick the school, we'll help pick up the bill.
It worked. Veterans came home, bought houses in the suburbs, went to college, built the middle class. The homeownership rate in America went from under 44% in 1940 to nearly 62% by 1960. The GI Bill is often credited as the single greatest driver of that shift.
But the GI Bill had a problem, a serious one.
Black veterans were largely excluded.
Like many of the governmental systems put in place during the Jim Crow era, the GI Bill, in practice, systematically excluded most African Americans.
The VA delegated administration to local offices, especially in the South, where officials routinely denied Black veterans access to loans, university admissions, and job training. The wealth-building engine of the GI Bill ran almost entirely for white veterans. The gap it created between white and Black family wealth is still measurable today.
Through the Korean War and Vietnam era, the Veterans Administration grew into one of the largest bureaucracies in the federal government. By the 1970s, it was running hospitals, clinics, benefits programs, and housing assistance across the country.
But Vietnam changed something. Veterans came home to a country that didn't want to talk about the war. Benefits were harder to access. Mental health care was inadequate for the scale of trauma soldiers were bringing back. And for the first time, veteran homelessness became visible on American streets in a way the country couldn't ignore.
By the 1980s, veteran homelessness had become a national crisis. The Reagan administration's cuts to mental health funding and housing programs hit veterans hard.
The people who did not represent a threat of violence to themselves or to anyone else could not be committed to an institution.
Estimates in the late 1980s put the number of homeless veterans somewhere between 150,000 to 250,000 on any given night.
Congress responded, gradually, with a series of programs designed specifically for veterans. The most significant was HUD-VASH, a partnership between the Department of Housing and Urban Development and the VA that combined housing vouchers with wraparound case management services. The logic was housing first. Get veterans off the street, then address everything else.
And it worked. By 2010, veteran homelessness was at roughly 74,000. By January 2024, that number had fallen to 32,882, a 55% decline in just over a decade. Veterans were the only demographic to see a decrease in 2024, even as overall homelessness in America hit a record high.
That progress is real. It matters, and it proves something important. When the country decides to solve a problem for veterans, it can. The tools work. The question is whether it'll last.
Because at the same time those numbers were falling, a different crisis was being ignored entirely.
Since World War II, more than 2 million service members have been discharged from the military with less than fully honorable status. Today, over 540,000 veterans are living with what's called an other than honorable discharge. And that designation locks them out of VA healthcare, disability benefits, the GI Bill, and housing assistance. All of it, gone.
These veterans are twice as likely to die by suicide and face 50% higher rates of homelessness. And the system that created this gap is racially discriminatory. Black service members are substantially more likely to face disciplinary action than their white counterparts for the same conduct.
Chris Goldsmith was an Army forward observer deployed at 19. He attempted suicide near a memorial for fallen soldiers. The Army gave him a general discharge. He lost all of his benefits and spent 12 years fighting to upgrade his paperwork. When the Army finally relented, they mailed the upgrade to his childhood home. He didn't find out for 6 months.
Then there's the West LA VA, the story I opened with.
For decades, the VA leased portions of the 388-acre campus, land legally deeded to house veterans, to private interests.
We had 50, 60 veterans sleeping outside the gates of the VA.
There are nearly 4,000 homeless veterans in Los Angeles, many of them sleeping right here on the street just outside of the West LA VA campus.
UCLA got a baseball stadium. The Brentwood School, one of LA's most elite private schools, built a $15 million athletic complex on the grounds.
Meanwhile, roughly 3,000 veterans remained homeless in greater Los Angeles. A tent city called Veterans Row formed on the public sidewalk just outside the VA gates. Andre Butler, paralyzed from the waist down, was living in one of those tents when an advocate warned that living there was a death sentence for him. 4 months later, he was stabbed to death.
In September 2024, a federal judge ruled that the VA had discriminated against disabled veterans, voided the commercial leases, and ordered 2,550 new housing units to be built on the campus. The judge wrote, and I want you to hear this directly, "After years of broken promises, corruption, and neglect, it is no surprise that veterans are unwilling to take them at their word."
The VA appealed. The Ninth Circuit largely upheld the ruling. Construction has been ordered.
Here's what the history of veteran homelessness tells us. The country is capable of making real progress when it commits to a problem. The 55% decline in veteran homelessness over 14 years isn't luck. It's the result of specific policy choices, housing first programs, dedicated vouchers, wraparound services. At least 12 communities across the country have reached what researchers call functional zero, meaning their system responds to veteran homelessness faster than new cases arise. 93% of them did it without adding new housing supply, just better coordination.
The tools exist. The evidence is there.
What doesn't exist is consistency. The VA campus scandal ran for decades before a court stopped it. 500,000 veterans with bad paper discharges have been locked out of the system that was built for them, many of them for conduct that had nothing to do with their service. And the staffing cuts of 2025 are now threatening to unwind a decade of documented gains.
At City Relief, we meet veterans at our outreaches regularly. And what I've noticed is that they almost never lead with the fact that they served. They're not looking for special treatment. They're just trying to survive.
When you find out someone's story, when you learn they deployed, they came home, they struggled, they asked for help and got told their discharge wasn't the right kind, It's hard not to feel the weight of what that means. The country said it owed them something, and then it found a reason not to pay.
We have a phrase in this country: we support our troops. You see it on bumper stickers, on banners at sporting events, and political speeches.
But support is not a slogan. It's a system. It's funding, it's staff. It's a campus in Los Angeles that gets used for what it was deeded for. It's a discharge process that doesn't lock out the people who needed them the most when they came home.
The gap between the rhetoric and the reality of how this country treats veterans experiencing homelessness is one of the most well-documented failures in American public policy, and it keeps getting wider.
And so here's the question. What does it actually mean to support veterans? Not symbolically, but structurally. That's worth sitting with.
We'll be back next month with episode 3. And if you want to stay connected between episodes, the City Relief newsletter is the best way to do it. And it goes deeper than any video can. Link is below. Subscribe. That's the first step.
We'll see you next month.